This week, the in-depth analysis of JavaScript sniffers uncovers new families of credit card skimming code. Nvidia has fixed 8 high-severity flaws that allow denial of service, code execution, computer virus alerts, and code execution. Computer viruses alert cancer scanning images. A serious Apache server bug gives root to bad people in shared hosting environments. Cybercrime groups are still rampant on Facebook. 90% of operational technology organizations, or OT, are cyber attack victims. And Tenable researchers have disclosed vulnerabilities in the Verizon Fios routers. And if you want to fool your Samsung Galaxy S10, well, first, I'm jealous that you have a Samsung Galaxy S10 because it looks like a really cool phone. But you can 3D print your finger. All that and more on this episode of Hack Naked News.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show that brings you the security news each week. And despite popular belief, we do wear pants. It's Hack Naked News. Let the team at Black Hills Information Security test your defenses. With over 10 years of experience in penetration testing, red teaming, and threat hunting, the testers at Black Hills will help you find the holes in your security before the bad guys do. The team at Black Hills cares about educating and sharing their knowledge by creating countless blogs, open source tools, and webcasts for you to learn more about the tradecraft of pen testing and red teaming. Visit securityweekly.com/BHIS to join their mailing list and view the latest blogs and webcasts from Black Hills Information Security. Welcome to Hack Naked News, episode 213, recorded on April 9th, 2019. I'm, of course, your host, Paul Asadorian. Register for our upcoming webcasts by going to securityweekly.com/webcast. If you missed any of our previously recorded webcasts, you can go to securityweekly.com/on-demand. Check out the 2019, Security Weekly 25 Index Survey. Basically, we're tracking 25 publicly traded security companies. If you use their technology or not, head over to securityweekly.com, click the survey link, tell us all about it, or tell us if you don't use any of those. All of that is useful data that will be presented to you in a private webcast if you are willing to fill out a quick survey. Our expert commentary this week is Neil Butchart from Ekran Systems. He's going to be talking about or answering the question, is the security industry broken? Before we get to that, though, the news for this week. In-depth analysis of JavaScript sniffers has uncovered all kinds of new families of JavaScript credit card skimming code. The security firm Group IB published a report which it shared with the Hacker News, where this article came from. And prior to its release of this report, we've detailed, as collectively as a community, nearly 38 different JavaScript sniffer families. That is JavaScript code that goes on e-commerce websites. However, Group IB has analyzed 2,440 infected e-commerce websites and produced its research. All these JavaScript sniffer families have been categorized into two parts. The first is universal code that can be integrated into any website. For example, Google Analytics, WebRank, and all kinds of things. And these are all variants of the widely popularized Mage cart, which use JavaScript sniffers. The second type of JavaScript sniffers are very specific to the type of e-commerce site. Get Billing, Post Eval, and all of those families. They were designed to work with those specific content management systems such as Magento, WooCommerce, WordPress, Shopify, and OpenCart. I think it's interesting research to take a look at in more detail and protect your websites against malicious JavaScript on sites that you are conducting e-commerce. Nvidia has fixed 8 high-severity flaws that are allowing for things like denial of service and code execution. It released fixes for 8 high-severity vulnerabilities in its Linux Tegra driver packages, which explains why I had updates to my Linux driver packages for my systems that have NVIDIA cards. The worst of these flaws could allow information disclosure, denial of service, and code execution on impacted systems. Overall, the chip maker on Tuesday released patches for 13 flaws that impact the Nvidia Jetson TX1 and TX2, two low-power embedded computing boards which carry the Nvidia Tegra processor and are specifically designed for accelerating machine learning in systems. The Jetson TX1 and TX2 are used in robots, drones, smart cameras, and portable medical devices. None of the impacted Nvidia chips patched are used in PC gaming systems. Of course, Nvidia also stated in the article that they have not observed anything in the wild, which I find just fascinating. They put that in every article. Like, oh, we haven't seen this in the wild. Were you looking? Computer viruses have been in a proof of concept. As you read the article, you'll discover computer viruses have been constructed to alter cancer scan images. The researchers from Ben-Gurion's University of Cybersecurity said the malware could also remove malignant growths from images. Their proof of concept was to insert images of cancerous tumors and the like into diagnostic images. So they also said that they could remove it, which would be really bad for patients who are in need of care that wouldn't get it because their images have been altered. The images targeted were scans of lungs, but the malware could be tuned to produce other fake conditions such as brain tumors, blood clots, fractures, or spinal problems, according to the Washington Post, which first reported on this research. Images and scans were vulnerable, said the researchers, because the files were generally not digitally signed or encrypted. This means any changes would be hard to spot. Now, if you're familiar with any type of medical imaging technology, of course, images are sent over the network, and largely what the research has stated and what I can imagine is that they're not digitally signed, meaning that anyone in transit can modify an image, or if you have access to the file system, modify an image. I don't know that this is a specific vulnerability in any imaging software. No further details were provided in this article, but it is a story that I will track as I know people who work in the medical imaging field. Serious Apache server bug gives root to bad people in shared hosting environments. CVE 2019-0211, as the vulnerability is indexed, of course, is a local privilege escalation vulnerability in the Apache web server, meaning, of course, it allows a person or software that already has limited access to the web server to elevate privileges to root. Now, the article goes on to state that in shared hosting environments, this could be problematic. In today's day and age, I don't really see a need to have a shared hosting environment. There are way better options in terms of virtual servers, virtual machines, and or containers, and or hosting providers that give you your own environment, so you don't have to share the same web server infrastructure. Of course, millions of businesses and people across the world are in shared hosting environments. And if just one site has a vulnerability that gives an attacker access to the system, now that attacker can gain root and compromise all of the sites on those shared hosting environments, which I predict will probably be a trend for some time until this vulnerability is taken care of. A year later, the cybercrime groups are still rampant on Facebook, according to Krebs on security. He reported that a mere 2 hours of searching revealed more than 100 Facebook groups with some 300,000 members openly advertising services to support all types of cybercrime, including spam, credit card fraud, and identity theft. Facebook responded by deleting these groups where possibly new ones just kind of spring up. There was a series of articles this week on this story. I encourage you to read the Brian Krebs article, as it was the source of truth, in my opinion, for this research. However, criminals are going to use social media and hide in plain sight. That's just what they do. They're going to use communication mechanisms that are available on the internet. 90% of OT organizations are cyber attack victims, yet visibility into these OT systems is still limited. Now, just the headline itself, you got to wrap your brain around this, that 90% of ICS or operational technology, embedded systems that are used to support some type of industrial control system, 90% are cyber attack victims, But also the article says that there's not great visibility. So does that mean the 10% are really secure, or they were hacked and they just don't know it? I love picking on these surveys. HelpNet Security reported that insufficient visibility into the attack surfaces. 80% of those respondents cited that lack of visibility, and being able to know what systems are part of their IT environments as the number one issue in the inability to prevent business impacting cyber attacks. Knowing what you have is extremely important to security because you can't secure what you don't know you have. Inadequate staffing and manual processes that limit vulnerability management was listed as number 2. And there was more ridiculous kind of statistics in the article stating that also communication with management and the C-suite was problematic. I think it does underscore 3 problems, not just in ICS or OT environments, but problems in security as a whole. Sorry, my teleprompter just catching up. Tenable has disclosed Verizon Fios router vulnerabilities. Chris Line is the researcher at Tenable that explained a couple of different scenarios that could lead to this attack. Essentially, if you've got someone's password to their Verizon Fios router or obtain it in some way, you can then execute commands on that said system and take it over. Now, the actual scenarios that presented here, it's no reason to go sound the alarm. I think you should obviously patch your Verizon Fios routers. I'm not sure in what cases Verizon would do that for you. I think that's left up to you to upgrade your own firmware on them, and you should do that. However, Chris explained that the authenticated command attack injection CVE 2019-3914 is possible in a LAN environment where remote administration is enabled. The attack becomes possible remotely. He noted there are 2 viable attack scenarios. The first, an insider or a guest that connects to your Wi-Fi and figures out your router's public IP address. From there, they can log into the router's admin interface to enable remote administration. After that guest leaves, he or she can exploit the CVE 2019-3914 remotely from across the internet to gain remote shell access to the router's underlying operating system. The other scenario outlined by Chris Line is an attacker masquerading as a Verizon tech support employee. Okay, hold on. Now, when we're talking about Hollywood movie plots here, the point is there is a vulnerability, details are available, and you should update your Verizon router. And that concludes. Nope, sorry. There's one more. The Samsung Galaxy, of course, S10 Fingerprint sensor has been duped by a 3D print. The Samsung user has posted on Imager this weekend under the alias Dark Shark, saying that he was able to fool the Galaxy S10's fingerprint using a simple technique that took him 13 minutes to be precise. He first took a picture of his own fingerprint, transferred that picture to Adobe Photoshop, and created a 3D print. From there, he used a 3D print to physically sign into his phone. Simple as that, folks. We'll take a short break and come back with our expert commentary from our friend Neil at Ekran Systems. Stay tuned. The question is simple. Have any of the systems on my network been compromised? The answer is harder than it should be. Enter AI Hunter. Active Countermeasures has automated and streamlined techniques used by the best pen testers and threat hunters in the industry to create AI Hunter, a network threat hunting solution that does the first pass of a hunt for you to identify systems that are most likely to be compromised and scores the results on a scale from 0 to 100. You can then research those systems in depth with AI Hunter. Focus your valuable time on the systems that need your expertise with AI Hunter. Sign up for a personal demo today at securityweekly.com/ACM. Welcome back, everyone. Quick announcement. John Strand will be teaching active defense and cyber deception at Black Hat 2019. You can register for his class at blackhat.com. Here with me today for expert commentary, answering the question, is the security industry broken? Is Neil Butchart from Ekran Systems. Hopefully I said all that correctly, Neil. Probably not, but I guessed.
Perfectly. Yeah, long-time listener, first-time caller, so I always want to say that. Thanks, Paul.
Excellent. Welcome, Neil. So, Neil, you're going to answer the question for us. Is the security industry, is it broken? And I'd like to also know how we fix it.
Yeah, appreciate that. So in terms of the, it's a big question, obviously, is the industry broken? My my point in coming on today is to really talk about the sales from a sales perspective. I'm not sure if you've ever had anyone on from sales before, as a matter of fact, but I think it's important to really better understand the needs of the security professional and the sales professional, and I think that's really what's broken today.
Where does it break down? Is it a communication failure between this, and I've observed this as well, between the security industry and the consumers of these services, largely enterprise folks working in a professional capacity in security today?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's I mean, you've seen a lot of blogs. Obviously, it happens quite frequently where you have some of these cybersecurity luminaries who are, frequently talking about how cybersecurity solutions today, or the salespeople selling the cybersecurity solutions today, are, selling the kind of the smoke and mirror type of solutions, and there is that, and I couldn't agree more with that particular statement. There are a lot of companies out there that are selling solutions, but there are also there are reasons how they're selling it and the methodology that they're using, and that really doesn't match to the security professional, the VP of security, or the CISOs. They want you to fully understand their particular challenge and their solution. And that's the kind of the disconnect there, is that the sales individuals are really pressed and pushed from atop, from, in many cases, the VCs who obviously want to get a fast return in many cases on their investment. The CEOs who are beholden to those particular VCs and the shareholders. And so it's kind of a push down and a knock-on effect, in essence, where the salespeople have KPIs to meet, and or as many phone calls as they can possibly make in a particular day, and send emails out, et cetera, et cetera. And this is really against the desire of the security professional, the VP security, or the CISOs, and that's really where we kind of butt heads. And it's no one's fault; it's just how it's evolved. And I would hope that we can better understand each other's position in order to fix this broken status right now.
Yeah, I find it interesting, Neil. One of the things I found attending RSA this year is it was very apparent that many CISOs were not attending RSA, and if they were, they really weren't shopping, because it was just too overwhelming. And kind of going along with what you're saying, it was just like fast and furious. Everyone's trying to sell them something, and that's not what they want. What I hear you saying is the security professionals want the industry to better understand their problems and use that as a starting point. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely correct there. So, I mean, RSA is a perfect example where, it's the vendors that are making this happen. The vendors are sponsoring the events. The money is coming from the vendors. The security professional, the VP and the CISOs, they love going for the most part. There are parties, there are lots of new things to see. They meet their peers. So it's a wonderful event in that regard. But today we're talking that there are companies that are actually dangling dollars to come to their particular booth. I mean, what particular value that has for anyone, to be honest, is beyond me. So in that regard, I mean, I think there's a total disconnect. And what I found, and what I would recommend for the security professional, is that they kind of focus on the companies that have been around a little while, not necessarily with the top brand name, for example, but just companies that have been around a little while and who focus on the technologies more so than the sales and marketing. I'm kind of cutting myself out of a job here, by the way, but I'm willing to be the sacrificial lamb in this case to sort the problems out. And what I mean by that is that there's a lot of challenges there with regards to companies who are forced, as I mentioned before, by the VCs, by the CEOs, to get the sales. Right? That's the kind of mantra when you're in the sales position: get the sales, because they want that return. So I get that; that's their job. There's no one's at fault there. But that's the biggest challenge that we face today, is to really looking at companies that are really focused in on the technology itself and not the sales and the marketing. Anybody can create a kind of a sales pitch which is glossy, beautiful, and it really appeals to the security professionals. But they're in no hurry, nor should they be in any under any pressure to make a decision after a sales pitch. I think it's incumbent upon the sales professionals to take their time to try the technology in their system or on their system or in their environment, so they can really be assured that the technology does what it said it's supposed to do.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things that I like to talk about is on either side, right? If you're a security professional or if you're a vendor, one of the early things you should do in the sales process, in my opinion, is explain how your technology is deployed. Is it an agent? Do I need to sniff the network? Do I deploy it in the cloud? And that seems to be like so far buried in a lot of people's, sales and marketing materials that security professionals kind of get lost in the beginning and they dismiss it. And I feel bad for the companies that do have really good tech that solve people's problems, but we don't know how it's deployed. So when they start talking, we're really confused. Do you find that as well, Neil?
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Yeah, and in terms of kind of just missing the big picture, the fundamental workings of the technology itself, and obviously the intuitiveness, how easy it is to install, what the value is that the company is getting from investing in the technology. So it's kind of what someone has. I mean, if there's a demo, regardless if it's agent or if it's agentless or if it's SaaS-based or whatever the median used to deliver the solution, I think it's just incumbent upon the security professionals there to really try it and really do a test trial or test run. I'll give you an example. I mean, it's probably not the most accurate analogy, but it's the car industry. The car, if you were looking at a nice car, a sports car, or let's say an off-road vehicle, and they said, okay, look, you could take that for a 30-day test drive and then bring it back and let me know what you think. And if these car dealerships were offering these types of trials, I think everybody would take them up on that particular offer. And that's really what's offered in the cybersecurity, but rarely do people actually spend the time to take that test trial. And I think that's something that it's very important for the security professionals to spend the time to really look and try and make sure that as the solution that they're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And proving that it can have value in your network is really, or in your systems or in the cloud or in your application, wherever the solution happens to lie, is really, really important, right? And I think it's the combination or that marrying of problem and value, right? Customer has this problem, we have a solution, and it provides this value. And I feel like sometimes that value is very, very thin. It's like thinly veiled, and it really needs to be a strong value statement to get people to spend the time to do that trial. And I think that's also the feedback I get is a lot of security professionals today have very limited time to test new solutions.
Correct. That's the biggest challenge. That's what they're facing for sure. I mean, I really did want to just go over a very kind of brief timeline just to give you, those who are new to the industry, will begin to understand some of the challenges there. And this is just a fundamental sell-buy type of relationship where I've kind of when I put it into decade by decade, and it's a generalization, of course, but just to give you an idea. So in 1990, I'm sure some of us on the line, you weren't born, but I certainly was. But 1990 to 2000, for example, I mean, people buy from people. This is what we used to hear all the time. And so it was important that you on the phone. It was a relatively new thing, believe it or not, but individuals were on the phone all the time. 2001 to 2010, people buy from people who they trust. There were less people starting to pick up the phones, but this email thing is kind of cool, right? I mean, so that was getting into the email. 2011 to 2020, people buy from people who they trust and understand their challenges and needs. That's great, but given the kind of the directions driven by the investors or the VCs and the investors. There are limitations in how much time I could actually spend with each individual going into the challenges that they themselves face. So again, it's just that square peg round hole situation here that we've got. 2021 to whenever, it might be another decade or 2030, but people buy from robots, AI and machine learning. No calls, no emails, no human interaction, only information feeds via social engineering algorithms. Is this where we want the industry to go?
Absolutely not. And I think it comes down to trust, right? And you have to trust, and especially in security, what I've learned over the years is that, especially with this type of software, hardware, or solution, is that you really have to trust the vendor, because this software is helping you protect your most critical assets. And that trust comes from humans. It comes from a number of different factors that we've presented on. In fact, I just presented in Orlando on this very, very subject, in fact. And definitely trust is part of the component. And vendors being transparent, I think, is part of that trust. And I think a lot of times you're not necessarily going to lose a sale if you are transparent. I mean, maybe it's not a fit at that time, but you'll gain that person's trust. So whether they go to a different company or they have a need for that solution in the future, you've earned their trust, rather than selling something before they needed it or selling something they don't need, right?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in integrity, and it's all about that transparency, like you mentioned. But the trouble is that those companies who are in often cases selling smoke and mirrors, they can't be transparent, right? So I think that the more the individual, whether it's the sales or the pre-sales engineering or whomever you're having a demo with or proof of concept with, as long as those individuals or these companies are transparent, I think that in itself will provide you the reassurance that what they have as a technology is what they have.
For sure. Any final tips for either the security industry side or the security community side on this subject, Neil?
Yeah, I think it's incumbent upon all of us, from sales and from a security profession. It's a little bit of a disadvantage when the CISOs, quite frankly, be on the sales guys, because the solution. So it's a little bit unfair, but I would just like us to kind of respect each other's domains, understand that there are challenges on both ends, and just try our best to like you mentioned, the transparency, test the solution, and please go beyond the pitch, the sales and the marketing presentation. I've seen so many individual companies purchase off that is just, it's not a good idea.
I agree. I think transparency has to go both ways. I think you, as the security professional, have to be transparent about what problems or challenges you're trying to solve. In some cases, I know that doesn't always come across, and it can be kind of held back because you don't trust the vendor, right? The vendor on the flip side has to be transparent about their true value. And I think if we do those two things, Neil, it will see significant improvement. Now, Neil, very quickly, tell me about Ekran Systems.
Yeah, so Ekran Systems, about 5 years old, and this is one of the kind of the technologies that I was referencing before, where it's really driven by the engineering, the development. So this solution just works. It really does, and you're not going to find all of the smoke and mirror type of presentations, the silky sales and marketing. It's a solution that obviously serves a major purpose today, and that is it helps. It's not going to be the silver bullet, of course, but it certainly helps those security professionals to kind of make sure that the insider threat, that you actually have an eye on that. I think there's coming extensively from the external threat side of the business, spending a couple of decades in that, and now in the insider threat. It was really it wasn't really a thought of mine at the particular time. I was focused on the external threat vectors, but internal threat, I think from time immemorial, from the A2 Brute time, there's always individuals, sometimes inadvertent, sometimes malicious or nefarious, but they can really damage your business. And in that regard, it's very, very, very important to have a solution or a technology that can actually oversee your business operations from the user activity monitoring side. And I think there's a lot of companies that may have been breached, and they're really, really not aware of it today because they don't have anything in place, because most of the budgets have been spent on the external threat.
Well, and I think you hit on two very important points that are oftentimes misconceptions when we talk about insider threat. Many people believe that it's always malicious, but insider threats happen by accident, right? Someone makes a mistake. It's still in the classification of insider threat. And I also think in terms of how often you think this happens in your organization, if you're not looking for it, it may have happened and you don't know it, right? So you really need to take those two things together and come up with a comprehensive solution for your organization, especially even just given those 2 points.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I would I'm not sure how long I've got here, but I would certainly suggest to the security professionals there to really look at the fundamentals. I think it's still over 50% of the breaches are the age-old problem of vulnerabilities, right, and missing patches. And so it's a mundane operation. We all get that, but it's something that's very, very important. And I do believe, and there's been a lot written that the insider threat is coming very, very close to that. So I don't think we need to concern ourselves as much as the nation threat type of problems, as much as you've got individuals who find the easiest way to get in, and that's typically through just through lack of vulnerability scanning and management and patch management remediation.
Completely agree. For those that want to learn more about Ekran and their various solutions, you can go to securityweekly.com/Ekran. That's EKRAN. I get that right? EKRAN. securityweekly.com/Ekran. Neil, thank you so much for appearing on Hack Naked News.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for listening and watching. See you next time.